welcome to Thursday's 905 Roundup. I'm Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And, well, we're going to talk about a big 905 story that is in Ottawa. But it's not in Ottawa, it's across the province. And it has supporters from across the province too, to be fair. And certainly opposition from across the province and across the 905. So, Joel, what's grinding your gears about this peaceful protest I hear is happening in downtown Ottawa right now?
So-called peaceful,
but I mean, it's sarcastic there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing that anyone in Canada is talking about this past weekend is this truck convoy for freedom, and I use air quotes around that to protest. I'm not sure what at this point. It started off with truckers' vaccine mandates to cross the border into America, and somewhere between, I'm going to say, Calgary and Thunder Bay, it transformed into basically every gripe that we have against government and Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, and apparently also, I'm going to say, certain elements of the Conservative Party, as it turns out. Just basically, we have a gripe against anyone in power. We're just going to go and hold up Ottawa. Now, the reason why I say there's a 905 connection is on the Thursday and Friday prior to this weekend's events, there's a large contingent from the 905. There were reports from Halton Police and Peel Police that there's concerns that basically another convoy going to meet up with them in Ottawa was going to be coming through the 905, coming as far down as Niagara, winding up through the Golden Horseshoe, and running the risk of causing traffic problems here in the region. To date, I don't think there's anything reported, but you can see on overpasses along the QEW and then along the 403 and 401, people gather on overpasses to wave flags and show their support. And so the reason I look at this as a 905 story is that, it's clear that at some point in Ottawa, this is going to end. Those trucks will be either towed away or just give up and leave, but they're going to go home. And it turns out that there's a large faction here in the 905 region. And
I guess if you take any population of how many people live in the broadest definition of the GTHA, 10 million, 8 million, I can't remember. Big chunk of people, let's put it that way. Then you're going to find a large number of people support pretty much anything. The 10% of people who live in the 905 is a hell of a lot of people. Doesn't mean that they have any have a leg to stand on in terms of kind of being justified as saying that they are the people. It's such a the maths just doesn't add up for me with this whole bizarre thing. I mean,
what gets me is that we know from public health statistics that the majority of people clearly on the side of vaccines. I've heard numbers between 85 to 90% of the eligible population are fully vaccinated. And so the people who are not vaccinated are clearly a very, very vocal minority against it. Now, here's where I get perturbed is I don't know what it is that they're protesting. I don't know what the objection to everything is. I mean, I do and I do and I don't. People are tired. People are tired of seeing restaurants being closed, and people are tired of the open and shut antics of our provincial premiers. But let's face it. I mean, this is the reason why is because the anti-vax contingent of our population, they're the ones who got Omicron, and they're the ones who had to go to our hospitals and clog up our system. Like that, this is the reason why we had the lockdowns, why we had to close down our schools and restaurants, is because we were trying to limit these individuals from getting Omicron and going into our hospitals and clogging it up. And to say that they're the ones who are hard done by, or they're the ones fighting for our freedoms, I kind of call BS on it. We're the ones, those of us who got vaccinated, those of us who've been doing the social distancing, we have been pulling the weight of everyone, of this minority so far in this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of got to the point where I almost resent engaging in arguments. why the hell should I respond to arguments which just don't make any sense at all? That are moronic. Now, I said to someone on Twitter, I didn't say to someone, I just made a general point that, my Twitter feed is just wall-to-wall truckers and people pointing out how wrong the truckers are. And that's fine. But it's also a valid point to say you're not doing any good, because the only people reading your stuff are people who already agree with you. They're not, certainly not reading it. And, if you are going to persuade people, ultimately you have to persuade people of different points of view. I mean, you're not going to persuade the leaders. The leaders are probably irredeemable assholes and are going to be for the rest of the time. But every movement has its leaders and it has its followers, and ultimately you persuade people of a different point of view. And if you keep on calling them idiots, it doesn't actually help very much. We've got to find, what I'm ultimately saying is we need to find better ways or rediscover older ways of actually having conversations with people that we disagree with. But I mean, I guess that just goes to the root of everything that's wrong with society at the moment.
Here's the thing with that argument. I keep hearing this, we need to have a conversation with the other side.
Well, and I'm not talking about having a conversation with fascists. I mean, I'm talking about...
Well, no, I'm not even talking about that. I at some point, there is no, you got to realize there is no middle ground. I don't see a compromise. Those who were vaccine hesitant either are coming around to see they've seen the evidence, say, okay, my fears have been put to rest, or they're just saying, you know what, screw it, I'm going to get it, or what. Like those individuals that we had to convince, that we had to say, okay, no, look at the facts, look at the evidence. The reality is billions of people around the globe have gotten a vaccine. We aren't seeing, billions of deaths or what have you. The vaccines do work. Okay, those people say, oh yeah, okay, I see your point. Okay, you're right. I'll go get a shot. This 10 or 15% of the population there are now just demanding, well, the rest of us, the rest of us give up everything and we just have to cater to them. I'm sorry, I have no patience anymore. I really don't.
And don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm completely happy with. And
I don't see how, where we sit down and say, okay, I see your point. I see where they're coming from. I understand their point of view. I just think they are absolutely wrong. And there's nothing that they are going to say that's going to convince me otherwise. So
I guess the point I'm ultimately making is about the people who may lean in the direction of supporting that kind of point of view, who do not out and out support it yet, of kind of bringing, the polarization of debate is a massive problem we have in society. I don't think, and we can't question that things have become so polarized that we have in society in the Western world, far beyond Canada, we have two solitudes, as the phrase goes, that aren't talking to each other. That's a problem. We need to, in terms of this specific thing and these specific idiots, yeah, I mean, I think just mandate the damn vaccines. Or, I mean, again, I always go back to examples of other huge crises, such as World War II, where, if you didn't want to fight, if you didn't want to be conscripted, and if you didn't want to fight, you could do that. You had that right. You had that freedom to choose not to fight. However, there were massive results that came from that decision that would be extremely inconvenient to you. So, ultimately, I don't think anybody is going to hold people down or force a needle into their arm. The only debate is about, how big is the price that you pay if you're not going to take it? And this is just a tantrum by a minority of a minority of fairly privileged white people. I mean, sure, a lot of them were fairly working class people and that kind of stuff, but basically this is Trump in Canada. This is our
they are very
general
privileged.
Decision.
They are very privileged. I mean, let's face it, they rolled tractor trailers into downtown Ottawa, and there is there's been no rapprochement by the Ottawa police or OPP or anybody. Again, I'm a little shocked and perturbed that these people go into our nation's capital. They shut the city down. The downtown is shut down, essentially. People are fed up with the honking and blaring of horns and the desecration of the war memorial. And it's just, at some point you got to sit there and say, well, if this was a First Nations protest, if this was a Black Lives Matter protest, if they were doing this, how long would it take for us to see the RCMP in full paramilitary tactical gear coming in and storming the ramparts, so to speak. I'm just really shocked, dismayed, and just perturbed by all of it that this is going on. And again, my kind of bring down the question is, what happens afterwards? Do we go on and pretend that this never happened? Do we go and go back to our Canadian politeness and say, we just have to listen to the other side and that's what I have to say? Or do we kind of grow up here as a society and say to these people, no, you don't win this one. It's time to clamp down on these people. And just say
the people that need to be clamped down on are the rebel, the people who are driving this thing and have been driving it for the last decade. The Fox Newses that comes out, that you can subscribe to Fox News in Canada, but also the other far right things that are just spreading this disinformation and spreading conspiracy theories that just make ludicrous.
I'm encouraged in our democracy is intact is because, and you want to talk about a failure of communication. So this truck convoy rolls into Ottawa with the intent of rounding up Justin Trudeau and holding him for war crimes and demanding that the government be dissolved and replaced, with something else. And instead, they have the one leader who came out and publicly endorsed them and said, yes, I fully support you. He's now facing an internal civil war in his own political party, and he's now fighting for his political life. And it's just said, where did this go left? Like, where did this go wrong? That this is just, it's just this weird topsy-turvy nonsense. It's literally children throwing a temper tantrum on a national scale. And it's just, you know what? I don't have time for it. My heart goes out to the people of Ottawa, because at what point do you just say enough's enough? Send in the police, arrest, impound their trucks and their RVs and whatnot, and say, yeah, you don't have any money to get home. Too bad.
Again, people have a right to protest. Okay, let's get out of the way, but that is not defending this protest and the way it's behaved, which has not done any of the things that protests are supposed to do, among which is just, holding the downtown Ottawa hostage, in essence. It's like, that shouldn't be possible. They shouldn't have let that happen. You put up a couple of roadblocks, what are they going to do? This could have been prevented now if they want to, there were smarter ways of dealing with it. It's like, yeah, you can go and protest, but you're not bringing those damn trucks downtown. Go and stand out in the cold like everybody else who protests does. No problem. But no. Somehow they were just allowed to drive in there and settle right down. This is our storming of the Capitol moment, because they may not have stormed Parliament, but we had an election when. How many months ago? And who won? And much as I'll be the first to bitch about the way our electoral system works.
Well, it's not about that. It's about, we had an election. Democracy prevailed. Your outcome didn't happen. Too bad. That's what happens in a democracy. We don't necessarily get the guy or woman that we want elected into power. But you're right. Like, to go in and say, we demand that the Governor General dissolve Parliament and we impose this, I don't even know what they're trying to do. Aside from that, it's ridiculous. And you're right. It was, our January 31st moment was I'm rambling here, but you're right. It was our January 6th moment. It was our storming of the Capitol. Thank goodness that they weren't armed. Because but this is just,
it's
the people
behind these movements ultimately, they're ludicrous, right? January 6th insurrection, or whatever the hell we're calling it now in the States, was farcical. The only thing which makes it non-farcical was A, that people died, and B, that they actually got indoors and kind of sat in there for a couple of hours with the complete absence of the people who are meant to defend that building. Not the complete absence, but the complete failure of the procedures that should have been in place. It's just the same. You've basically got people camping out in downtown Ottawa in outright denial that that the elected prime minister is the elected prime minister. And it's like, whatever else you get to question in life and whatever else you get to promote, you don't get to call elections into question.
Well, there's that, and it's just, again, it's this childish temper tantrum that we're supposed to, I guess what I'm angry at is the bullies went in, kicked over the table, literally urinated on the rug. We're just destroying the place. And we were just supposed to sit there and take it. And I sit there and say, like, when do you get to kind of punch back? When do we just say enough's enough? We're not doing this anymore.
And I think
right,
the traditional
bring in the vaccine mandates, bring in the masking mandates, make it clear. You want to go out for a bite to eat, you want to go see a movie, you want to go work out in a gym, you are getting vaxxed, and you're getting your booster shot whenever you need it. You need to be masked. We need to maintain it. If you have to maintain social distancing, then change fire code laws to accommodate that. But these are coming back. If you have a problem with it, then stay home. That's it. Just stay home. Don't bother us. Griping your business. Go on Twitter. But the rest of us have lives to live.
And yeah, people are talking about sending in the army and all this stuff. And the point I guess I'd make with regards to that is it should never have got to a position where that's the only option on the table to get them out. The snow may take care of it, and the fact that their porta potties are all full up. It shouldn't. This shouldn't be allowed to happen. There shouldn't. The kind of. I definitely get the approach usually that with many demonstrations, although I certainly didn't bloody see it with, remember the G7 in Toronto, it is better to take a softly approach with protests sometimes. But, with this kind of thing, when you've got days on end in the capital, literally stopping people doing exactly the things these people are protesting about, which is earning a damn living, it's like, well, when is enough? And it's got to be coming soon. But the fact that it got to that point is the bigger failure. Absolutely.
Why don't we leave it at that for this part? We'll come right back after this quick message from our sponsor. And we're back. Now, looking away from Ottawa, we're going to look down to Hamilton. And if people remember from our 905 Roundup episode from last week, we were talking about the city of Hamilton shutting off the vents in their city hall, which the homeless in Hamilton use to stay warm, especially on cold winter nights like we're experiencing now. On that note, there's been an initiative taking place at the grassroots level that is looking to kind of look into this problem. What am I talking about, Roland?
Yeah, the tiny shelters, Hamilton's Alliance for Tiny Shelters is something that popped up on everybody's Twitter feed today, and now has an article in The Spectator. It's basically an idea to rather than just kick people down the line who are living who are homeless at the moment, rather than just kicking them off the doorstep and hoping they go away, and rather than pulling down their tents and hoping they go away, that we actually give them short-term, safe, clean, heated accommodation in the form of tiny shelters, which you might call huts, I guess. That would be the suggestion is that these could be put in the John A. Macdonald school grounds, the former Sir John A. Macdonald school grounds, and immediately a couple of at least two, or if not three, or more of the city councillors jumped on this. I know Narinder Nan did. I know John Paul Danko did. Sort of making broadly positive noises about this idea, and it's the kind of idea that we're talking about all the time. Is like this is like a new idea I haven't come across before. That says, why the hell can't we do something better than the traditional things of just literally kicking people off the doorstep and boarding it up? It's certainly not luxury. It's an 8x10 temporary shelter, but with lighting, heat, fire extinguisher is the idea, and would have a small fridge and a microwave. But
you know what? It's the kind of the initiative of providing real a real shelter. Like the problem is the shelter systems don't really work. I mean, they're violent. They're violent. They're crowded. You're not really allowed to stay there. Aside from overnight, you're kicked out the next morning. So it's this shows to be a much better, a more humane solution, I would think, to the homeless problem. I don't see it as a permanent solution, God no. But my hope would be,
well, it's not permanent. It's not permanent, no. But they're also making the point that they don't see it as short term in the way that we can traditionally think of short term solutions for housing, and that they would stay there until these people had permanent places to live. And I think that also is a valid, very, so it's like if you want to get rid of those huts off that field, then you better provide housing to the people who are living in them. And that seems like a very reasonable way of looking at it.
But the great thing about this is that they're clean, they're safe, and you can have social programs go in to help connect those who are in need into the, if you want a better term, like the social pipeline, right? They can get them plugged into social programs, employment services, just able, like, where these people are. You can go to them and say, okay, hi, I'm Joel. I'm from this program. I can help put you in touch with employment opportunities, or I can look into mental health and addiction issues if that's what you're looking for. It's, and again, it's not, I don't want to, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to say, oh, this is perfect. But I look at it and say, like, it's, a lot of the problem is with homeless is that they're in one spot one day and they're not there the other. But this way, you're like, no, I know where they're going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'll just show up and say, hey, let's keep with this. Let's keep with this. Okay, plug you in and get you off the streets permanently.
So Ted McMeekin, who was formerly the Liberal MPP for Dundas, Flamborough Dundas, Flamborough Westdale and Dundas. He's kind of the spokesman for this thing, and this isn't this. I didn't know this, but apparently a similar project was set up nearly 2 years ago in Kitchener that currently is housing 50 residents in 43 of these very small cabins, and the co-founder and board member of that group in Kitchener said that it has had a completely transformative effect on the lives of the people concerned. So that they call that project is called A Better Tent City, yeah, exactly. A better tent city seems to be pretty much exactly what it is. If it kind of acts as a better way to put pressure on councils to find permanent solutions for homelessness, I mean, it almost works on that basis too. That those things will be there as a reminder to the city that it's not. With people just sleeping rough and people sleeping in tents for whatever reason, it seems like we accept the idea of just sort of booting people off and hoping they go away, and which is the traditional thing that's just happened throughout my life, certainly, but just seems utterly futile.
I'd just like to see this kind of thing happening, because it's the humane and compassionate way to address this. At the center of this are people. They're not, they're people who are in need for whatever reason, whether they need a helping hand or they need some therapy or addiction issue, whatever the case may be. There's no cookie cutter solution to this. But I think the first thing is say, let's get you someplace warm and safe. Like that to me is like, that's the bare minimum. That's the starting point, right? And then once you're secure, right? It's almost like the hierarchy of needs, right? The first thing you need is shelter and security. That's one of the primary ones before you can start to think about building on anything else. And it's a sad state that for so long people just forgot about that. There's, you figure it out on your own and say, well, no, it's amazing. Just like a small insulated hut to protect you from the elements. It can go such a long way to getting you back on your feet to actualization of a person. Kudos to hats, or I guess hats off to them. Forgive the pun, but this is a really good thing, and I'm happy to see it taking place in Hamilton.
And I'll just throw one other quick thing. It's just kind of semi-related, just because it's another Hamilton thing. As we're waiting tonight for the sort of next big snowfall is being predicted or forecast, and it's just a chance to have another gentle go at the Spec. And then the Spec's a decent newspaper, not having a complete meltdown at them. But there's a headline today saying Hamilton is ticketing snow shoveling scofflaws amid a storm of blocked sidewalk complaints. Those blocked sidewalk complaints are mainly by people trying to get the city to do its job and come out and clear up sidewalks. Hamilton doesn't clear sidewalks. If you live in Burlington or many of the other 905 cities, sidewalks are cleared. It may take a couple of days, but usually there's a little thing that comes around and clears the sidewalk for you. It's not perfect because often the big plow comes around afterwards and covers it back up again. But basically, the point is you can't actually rely, much as we should all be good citizens and clear our own sidewalk. Some people are elderly, some people have disabilities, some people have other reasons why they can't actually clear their sidewalk. Each year multiple people die of heart attacks because they go out and try and clear their sidewalk and they're not fit and healthy enough to actually do it. So, actually doing this, prioritizing pedestrians in exactly the same way as we would prioritize drivers seems like a perfectly sensible thing to do, but Hamilton hasn't got there yet. So I was kind of cheesed off. The Spec suggests, it's basically putting the blame on citizens for not clearing their sidewalks properly. When it's like, no, this is a case of Hamilton being kind of living in the dark ages, having a very car-centric approach, as we know, and it really is bad. I mean, I've noticed the difference since coming here that I nearly wiped out and broke my neck the other day. And, I'm not that old and decrepit yet, but, it's not that far away. So kind of a related thing of stories being covered without really kind of, I would say, looking at those stories from the right direction, both in this case and with the, what we were discussing earlier with the...
tiny huts.
Anyway, enough of that, I think.
Okay. Well, that's our episode for this week, folks. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode of the 905. Until then, take care and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.